It's Sunday, September 14th, and today our severe weather pattern is going to continue across the Great Plains, stretching all the way from the Texas Panhandle all the way up to the U.S.-Canada border and parts of North Dakota. We can see that today our risk of severe weather is going to be quite a bit more uniform. It's not going to be segmented like we have seen the past couple of days. It's just going to be one nice shape, and that shape is going to be for a marginal risk, so nothing really that crazy, but still severe weather, so definitely want to stay weather aware if you're in those areas highlighted. And then in this light shaded area, there's just that general threat of some thunderstorms, but our main risk is going to be that severe weather risk area that I just mentioned. It's mostly going to be fueled by that threat of some 60-mile-an-hour damaging winds. There is a 5% chance of seeing that for anybody within that marginal risk area. And then hail is going to cover pretty much the exact same area, potentially seeing some 1 to 1.5 inch in diameter hail today. Now, unlike the past couple of days, we actually do have a bit of a tornado risk in place. We have a 2% tornado risk, and that would just be for that conditional threat of a couple of weak spin-up tornadoes along our thunderstorm area today. And here's what that severe weather risk area is going to look like later today. Starting around the mid-afternoon hours, we're going to start to see some organized storms form. Of course, before that, we're just going to have a lot of showery and some gusty winds moving through the area, really starting in the morning hours. That's going to be brought by a low pressure system really making its way up a trough that's kind of overspreading this area. That trough is also going to help to bring a lot of these storms as well. But with this low pressure system, we also have a couple of other embedded lows within this trough. One is likely going to be down here around the Kansas-Nebraska border, then another one down here in the Texas-Oklahoma panhandle. Now, what's going to happen is that all of these are going to march northward as we go through the day. Then also with those short waves, they're also going to create some kinks in that big trough and also create some forcing for our storms. That's why we're going to see a couple of bigger lines pop up. One is expected right here along the kind of central Nebraska and central Kansas where that border meets. This could potentially bring all hazards of severe weather, although those are going to be on the lower echelon of things, but still want to watch out for that. We also have a little cluster of thunderstorms possibly initiated by that low pressure system and shortwave down here in the Texas and Oklahoma panhandle. That would likely just be for that conditional threat of seeing some gusty winds and then some hail as well. But also as this trough moves northward, it's going to also bring some weather up north as well. And taking a better look at that in front of our low pressure system and kind of frontal area that it's going to create, it's also going to create a bit of a band of storms along that. These could possibly bring the threat of a couple of spin-up tornadoes and also just all hazards of severe weather in general. And this risk would mostly start around the mid-afternoon all the way up until the evening hours. Then after that, that risk is likely going to die down quite a bit, and it would probably peak for seeing a spin-up tornado risk all around when that low-level jet kicks in right around sunset. But after that, it looks like it's just going to be a lot of rain and thunderstorms. Still, probably you want to stay weather aware though for a couple hours after nightfall, just to make sure everything has passed. And here's a better look at that trough. We can see that it's even started to get kind of a negative tilt look. That's really going to help to provide a lot more of that more likelihood of seeing some shear that could bring some tornadoes potentially, although it would just be some spin ups because it's likely just going to be a linear mode for storms today. Also, this can help to advect some moisture northward into areas that we don't normally see being super moist this time of year, like up in the Dakotas. So another also a reason why we could see some storms up there. But the main thing is going to be we're going to have a couple of kinks and low pressure systems or just vorticity maximums within this, bringing some areas of greater forcing to some areas, and then also just bringing that more favorable shear probabilities as well. And for our flood risk, it's pretty much going to follow our severe weather threat today, with it being the highest up here in the Dakotas. We could potentially see 2 to 4 inches of rain within that slight risk. Then for that marginal risk, which kind of tongues all the way down into the Texas panhandle, although it's pretty skinny, only going through central Nebraska, central Kansas, and then even western Oklahoma to get there. We could likely see 1 to 2 inches of rain within that. So still stay weather aware for some flood warnings if you're in that marginal risk, although the highest risk for that is going to be within that slight risk. And here is the storm environment that can be expected within our marginal risk today. We're going to notice a couple of things immediately. One is that our organizing shear is going to be quite high. That's going to be because that trough is really bringing a lot of organizing shear to the region, possibly being within that 35 to 40 knot range. So definitely some organized storms, potentially some stronger rotating updrafts. And with those rotating updrafts, we can see some hail. And that hail risk is further going to be supported by a 8 Celsius decreasing per kilometer mid-level lapse rate. Quite a bit of cape up here near our freezing level. And our freezing level isn't all that high. So potentially we could see some 1, 2.5, even potentially some 1 3/4 inch in diameter hail. That's mostly going to be hindered by that linear mode, but still want to watch out for that. For our tornado threat, though, our cloud base is going to be a bit higher than what we'd like to see. But when it's close to this 1 kilometer threshold, we still want to watch out because sometimes it can be lowered because the cloud bases of our storms extend out further in front of it, further lowering that. So still want to watch out for that and still want to remember that just because of this, that tornado risk is not zero. There's still definitely a chance. That's going to be because our 3 cape is over 100 and also our shear parameters are going to be pretty solid for seeing a spin up tornado risk. And also our shear vectors are going to be pretty parallel to our line of storms, which also has a knack to increase that probability of seeing some little pockets of vorticity within that line as well. Now back to that 3 cape, that also just increases the general threat of severe weather. Other things for that, we have a moist environment and definitely a unstable enough environment as well. 2000 cape. So definitely severe weather possible. Then for that damaging wind threat, we don't really all have that much dry air aloft. And then our downdrift cape isn't super crazy, but whenever we see severe storms, there is definitely still that threat for some scattered severe gusts. So still want to look out for that as well. And then we are actually going to cap off today's forecast by taking a peek at the tropics. Here is our invest out here in the main development region. It has actually made quite a bit of a trek so far, really moving off the African coast pretty quickly. And it is actually seen a hike in the probability of it expected to form. It is now at a 60% chance to form. Yesterday, it was at a 40% chance to form. So there is likely at least a system that we're going to see out of this right now. Even the models are agreeing with that, but there's actually really no reason to worry yet with this, as the models are kind of steering it away from the US altogether. And also when storms are this far away from making really any impacts at all, it's really not worth kind of guessing where these storms are going to go, because we've seen in the past that this track will change. So it's not really worth guessing, but still want to stay weather aware, and let's hope that trend of it curving out to sea continues.